Now let's talk about the EFS, Elastic File System. Okay, so to manage a network file system or NFS, the power of it is that it can be mounted on many EC2 instances at a time. So it works for EC2 instances that are going to live within the same region, but in different availability zones. So that's why it's called the network file system. And it's also going to work for your on-premises server if you mount them, and you first need to connect your on-premise environment. Of course, to AWS using direct connect or VPN connection, it's highly available. It's scalable, it's quite expensive, and it's about 3 times the cost of GP2 EBS volumes, Elastic Block Store volumes. And you are going to pay per gigabyte used, and which I think is quite a cool model. Whereas for the EBS you have to pay per gigabyte provisions. So your EFS file system will be living on AWS, and you will have a security group attached to it, and your EC2 instance, for example, across 3 different availability zones. If you set up the security groups correctly, can mount and access your EFS file system in any EC2 instance. So if we look at it, the use cases, for EFS are going to be counted content management, for the content management, web data serving, data sharing. WordPress is really good candidate for the use cases, and for it to work you need to have a Linux based AMI. So Windows does not work with EFS as of now, and you only need the a Linux based AMI. It's very important to understand this from an exam perspective, and overall the file system that you are going to use must be a POSIX compliant, POSIX POSIX compliant, and the control access to EFS, and would be able to control the access to EFS. You must use security groups. You get encryption at rest using KMS, and you can only attach it to one VPC, and you create one mount target, one elastic network interface ENI per AZ. So as I said, it's a POSIX file system, so that means Linux, okay, and it has a standard file API. The file system will scale automatically, which I think is really nice. Will scale automatically, so you can scale from 1 gigabyte to terabytes. Of course, you can to pay per users, per GB users. So you only pay for the number of gigabytes you have in your file system. So there is no capacity planning happening behind the scenes. Everything is a pay per users basis. Now, the very important part about EFS is to understand the performance and storage classes. So the first one is around the scale of EFS. So you get thousands of concurrent NFS clients, and you can get 10 gigabytes plus throughput per second, 10 gigabyte plus throughput per second, and you can grow to petabyte scale network file system automatically without any kind of maintenance. Now the performance mode is what you set at EFS creation time, and so you have by default the general purpose, which is going to be very good for latency sensitive use cases such as web server, CMS, and so on. But you can set the max IO performance mode. It's going to be higher. It's going to be of a higher latency, but the throughput is also going to be higher, and it's better for highly parallel workloads. So if you think about big data media processing, then the max IO is going to be a good performance. Max IO is going to be a good performance mode in that case. Okay, here are the trade-off is like the latency for throughputs. And now for a throughput mode, you also have two modes. So you have the bursting throughput mode, and where, for example, 1 terabyte gives you 50 megabytes of seconds per throughput, but you can burst automatically up to 100 megabytes per second. Okay, or you can provision the throughput in advance also. And so you set your throughput requirements regardless of the storage size. For example, if you only have 1 gigabyte and 1 terabyte of storage, for example, you could set the fact that you wanted instead you have 1 gigabyte per second as well as of throughputs. So you can see here that the throughputs is decorrelated from the size of the storage itself. Now for the storage classes, very important here. You have multiple features to know about. The first one is around the storage tier. So it's a lifecycle management feature. So to move files into a frequent access tier, after infrequent access tier, after int days, after n days. Okay, so by default they will be in the standard tier for frequently accessed files. But then if they are not used, then they will be moved into the EFS-IA, infrequently accessed, and of course there's going to be the lower price to store that file. But you are going to pay a small cost to retrieve that file if it's ever like accessed. So for this, you can just enable EFS infrequently accessed EFS-IA with a lifecycle policy, which again is going to monitor your files. And for example, if they are not accessed after 60 days, then they will be moved to the infrequently accessed tier. Now for availability and durability, you have two modes for EFS. The first one is regional mode, and so it's multi-AZ and it's great for production and it's kind of the default. But now there's also one zone EFS. So EFS 1 AZ, and this one is going to be great for development, because here in the case of the one zone, you will only have one AZ and it's lower cost. Okay, it's compatible with IA. So you get the EFS one zone IA mode, even friendly access mode, and there's going to be backups enabled by default. So in case one AZ goes down, your data is automatically going to be backed up. So you would choose EFS one zone just for cost saving and for usually dev environments. Now EFS has a way to be mounted for on-premises servers, and has a VPC peering. So your EFS has ANIs, okay, Elastic Network Interface. They are redundant across multiple AZ, and then your VPC elsewhere. It can be paired with your VPC of EFS for your EC2 instances to access your EFS drive, or also on-premises servers through direct connect or VPN, or for side-to-side VPN can also access your EBS volumes. Okay, now and you can build redundancy, for example, by having direct link, direct connect, or direct connect VPN. Now when you are on-premise server, you need to mount your EFS drives. They need to be mount using the IPv4 of the ENIs. Okay, they mount user DNS, whereas your EC2 instance could use a DNS. So make sure that when you have on-premises servers, retrieve the ENI IP and then use that for mounting your NFS drives. Now another feature we need to know about is around EFS access points. So this is to easily manage application access to NFS environments and enforce greater security. So for this, using these access points, we can define a user and group on the POSIX file system when accessing the file system. So this is going to allow us completely to restrict access to directory within the file system, and optionally specify a different root directory okay, yeah, and you can restrict access to these access points using IAM policies. So to make it very clear, here is my EFS file system with data secret, and the one more is config folder, and it has a data file folder, the secret file folder, and one config folder directly within the route. Directly within the root. Now if I set up an access point 1 with UID 1001 and GID 1001, which is just a user ID and a group ID, and the path is /config, then the users who have access to this access config using IAM will only get access to the config directory within your EFS file system. But another group, for example, that has the analytics user group at different access points, so 1002 and 1002 for group ID, and then only those will only have the access to the data file, and they can only access that file in the data folder. So again, all of this is managed through IAM permissions. Also, finally, you can get file system policies, and they are the same as the S3 bucket policies. They are resource-based policies, and by default, you have full access to all clients. But here, for example, I can say that Jishan can only do a mount and the write OK, and they must use a secure transport. So must encrypt the connection into EFS. So must encrypt the connection into the EFS. Okay. So that's it for this lecture, and I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next one.